the impression that I'm getting, and I know I've heard from a few people that have had your covers as well, that they're usually blown away, like, wow. And she even read the book. So, and it's incredible to think that you would just, somebody just say, yeah, so what's the story about? Okay, cool, I'll just slap this together. Or, hey, I've got that kicking around in my old archives, I'll just throw that at you. But you actually do something that literally ties in with the story. Not just the story, but in this case, I guess the literal author, the author behind the story as well. You try to tie it all in there with them, which is cool.
It's
So, a lot of layers going on.
well, and that's the thing is that you may not, people may not realize that, but
Yeah.
they still experience that. And like I did, here's another one of my ah I
An
need book
avalanche of
I need
books, not a bad way to go, but
this. This is another one of my favorite covers. I did this for Cemetery Dance for
I
Scott
love that.
Edelman's
Yeah,
book,
yeah.
Things That Never Happened. And has been nominated for the Bram Stoker Award 8 times and never won. He is an amazing, amazing fiction writer, and to get to illustrate for him was like it just like made me so nervous because his writing is so wonderful. And so I read this book, and one of the things that it's a collection, and one of the things that was really interesting about it is that he had a lot of older characters in the story. He dealt a lot with the themes of uh, loss, of memory, of family, of people holding on to things that they really shouldn't be holding on to.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do, so what I created was it's an older protagonist. It's not a 19-year-old girl or something. It is uh, her face is gone. Her head is a cage, and if you look very closely inside, it's a
There's her
death's head
mom.
moth.
That's cool.
So it it represents so many of the themes that ran through Scott's book,
Yeah.
and uh, but didn't say I'm going to illustrate this story in the book. But you know, I love being able to do that kind of thing where I can kind of distill it down into the themes. And I also think another thing is people need to remember that it's not enough to have cool art on your cover. It needs to be cool art that ties into your book, and it needs to be memorable.
Yeah.
So I also say that there's a test that's like, my book cover is the one with, right? So there was back, I don't know, for folks who watched Friends, every Friends episode was the one where or the one with,
Right.
and so, but I think that you need that with a book. The one with the giant monster coming out with the tram of tourists, right? The
Yeah.
one with this is let me pull another one. There's a couple of my other favorites here. I really do need bookends. I'm gonna work on that because when I pull the books, then they're all gone. Um,
The
so
carousellers.
if I die
I
underneath
think
a
you got some
pile of
jealous books
books,
there.
there
They're
we
like,
go.
pick me, not that one, pick me.
Right? This is a cover that I did for Scott Brown called Lost Creatures, and it's very
Oh, cool.
not my style. But
Yeah.
I've known Scott for a gazillion years, and when he approached me, I said, well, of course, I have to do your cover. And it's a lot of kind of magical realism. It's a collection of short stories, and some of them had other lives, and some of them are, and then some of them were brand new. And as I read when you look at a collection, it's like, how do you find the thing that most identifies an entire collection of work? And
Right.
so, what was really cool about this story, it was one of the news stories, and it was set during the pandemic. And it was, you know, how during the pandemic there were places where animals started to come back because people weren't there anymore.
Hmm.
And in this story, the giant koi returned to San Francisco Bay. And that's what the story's about. And it also helps that Scott lives in the San Francisco area, so having the San Francisco Bridge on the cover is
Yeah.
also a really nice sales thing for him.
Yep, everybody knows
But it
that.
also just really represented the the magical spirit of this book. And his books also kind of transition into the mainstream, kind of almost a literary, and so the font choice and the style also kind of played into all of that. But this was an example of something where I actually illustrated directly from a story because that story encapsulates the tone of much of the book.
Cool. And I love
So,
too that you've got the author's name and the title. They're extremely similar fonts. I mean, I'm gonna sound like I know all about fonts. I really don't, but I know what I can see, and they're very similar, but they're just slightly different enough where each of them stands out on their own, so they don't really
right.
mesh in and they don't get lost on each other. It's which is really cool.
Well, I love, especially when I can do things where the text interacts with the image. So
Yeah.
Lost is
Oh
behind
yeah, yeah.
the
Okay.
the bridge, and then Creatures right here is actually behind the bushes, so just a little bit.
Yeah, that's super cool.
And so, uh, so to be able to, I actually start every cover with the typography,
Okay.
and it changes as I go along. But I need to know how it's going to flow, how it's going to work, because the title and the byline are really some of the first things that you see.
Yeah,
And but I also love. Here's another example of typography that interacts with the text.
that's
So
cool.
this was Halloween Season by Lucy Snyder.
Yeah.
And if you look, Halloween Season actually looks like it's painted on
Oh
the
yeah,
pumpkin,
it goes around with the curvature, and that's cool.
right? And so, and this was actually very interesting. I'd never experienced this level before, but this is from Raw Dog Screaming Press, and they are fantastic in the marketing and promotion of their authors. And it went out to a lot of bookstagrammers and folks, and it was insane because it actually went out. Like people would go and they would post pictures with their pumpkins, and they would make their own like little like mini pumpkin people and stuff, and it
Wow.
was crazy. And I was like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
But it also, Lucy's collection had this everything from this kind of nostalgic, kind of Halloween friendly type stories to kind of
Yeah.
crazy, cosmic horror, and to create something where you can see all these small details. So you have the killer in the window,
Yeah.
and the child looking for help. Underneath here, we have, she
Well, I
says,
didn't even notice the child. Holy smokes! Yeah.
yes, and then we have a zombie under here, um, and then of course on the back we have demon,
Yeah. Of course. That is
and
cool.
but being able to, but I started the concept knowing that that's what I wanted to do with the typography, you know.
Very cool. And they seem like all the covers that you've shown me, shown all of us here, and the ones that I've seen as well. They're it's almost like a collection of curios that you have where you can't help but wonder. You kind of get like Jack Skelton syndrome where it's like, what's this? What's that? Because you want to know. Like even that pumpkin, I'm thinking, who's that killer in there? Is he out to get them? Is he hiding from them? What do these kids want? Why isn't anybody answering the door? What's going to happen when somebody answers the door? There's all
It's
these things going on that like I need to find out. So of course you're going to pick it up, you're going to touch it, you're going to want to see what it's all about, and
the
that's
questions,
awesome.
asking questions, making a cover that asks questions
Yeah,
is so you hit the nail right on the head. You have to have questions because if you don't have questions, you're not going to flip to the back.
right.
Right? If you've not, it's not enough to be like, oh, that looks cool. It should look cool. I
Yeah,
believe that it should look cool, but that's not enough to sell books
right.
consistently, at least.